Hello everyone and welcome to Motorcast. I'm your host Joshua Satil, and joining me today we've got Motorcast regulars Matty and Alex. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks.
But we are joined by a very, very special guest. We're absolutely honoured to welcome Matt to the show. So Matt, what do you even do on the internet? What's your role?
Hello Josh, thank you. I do that YouTube show. It's called Mystery Science Theater F1, where I just take old races and new races, just like the one that happened right now, and I basically make jokes around them so that F1 doesn't seem as boring as it usually is.
Yeah, you've certainly made quite a few of the past races a lot more exciting. Talking of excitement, let's talk about this Bahrain Grand Prix, and what do we all think of it then in terms of excitement? Where did it stack up in terms of Australia and China? Starting off with you, Matty.
Well, for me personally, I felt the start of it was incredible. Like, it was pretty good. Obviously, towards the end, it kind of trailed off a little bit, but I think it showed that these cars, even though the number of overtakes may not be there, you're still getting the close racing that you want, and you are getting these. Well, you're kind of getting the more quote unquote organic overtakes that aren't so reliant on DRS. But Bahrain itself is one of the easier tracks to overtake around, so we still got a few of those. But overall, I did enjoy the race.
And Matt, what did you think of it? Of course, third round now of the 2017 season. These new regulations.
Well, so far these regulations have shown the cars. They still have a little bit of they struggle a little bit running close, but the DRS right now is actually working in the way that you would expect it to be. They're not making overtaking easier, but they managed to get the cars closer in the middle sectors so that we can see more exciting passes on places you wouldn't usually see before. And I think that, again, despite all the high downforce, I think that the racing, at least in some parts, it has benefited quite a bit from the new regulations.
And Alex, where would you say this stacks up then against Australia and China? Best race of the season so far, or not quite as good as the previous two?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely the best race so far. I think what it shows is that with these new cars and new regulations, there's some tracks where it works better than others. We saw a lot of brilliant racing today, particularly that scrap over 11th place. You know, it wasn't for any points or anything, but it was so fun to watch. We saw in China where the DRS wasn't really even allowing people to pass down to that hairpin after the long straight, but today seemed to work really, really well, and not just overtakes into turn one. We saw overtakes all over the track today, so that was really good to see. And yeah, definitely a step forward step up from China and Australia, I'd have to say, in terms of excitement.
And of course the race itself, Sebastian Vettel of course triumphing in the end. And Matt, can we now say fully that Ferrari are capable of finally ending the Mercedes dominance?
Well, they are definitely able to compete with them, but dominance, it's going to be tricky in a few tracks. They're going to be better, either Ferrari or Mercedes. They have their own advantages, but like they are very much up to speed on this year. So I think we're going to have a close season this time, because people were saying we shouldn't judge the past two races because Australia is not a good track for overtaking or for close racing, and China we had the rain and things in there. But now I think that with Bahrain and with Vettel winning twice now, I think that we definitely have a good race for the title in our hands.
And Alex, of course, we've had a really, really close fight between Mercedes and Ferrari, but also seeing Red Bull a bit more in there today. Do you think that's going to be a kind of continuous trend over the season? Do you think we could have kind of three teams up there?
Yeah, I think what strikes me so far is 3 races in, and there's still absolutely no way of telling who's got the faster car between Mercedes and Ferrari. It'll probably vary different tracks as the season progresses, as the teams get upgrades, that sort of thing. I think Red Bull, they are getting there. Christian Horner said about the time differences in qualifying between Red Bull and the pole position is getting a bit smaller, so we'll have to see how that progresses. I think it'll be like what we've seen before, where Red Bull were just generally stronger at some tracks, maybe Monaco, where we saw Daniel Ricciardo really should have won the race last year, to be fair. So maybe they'll be particularly strong at those sorts of tracks, but we have seen when the Red Bulls do get in the mix, particularly in China, they can sometimes even outperform their cars, with Verstappen getting that podium. It's a shame for him today, because he could definitely have been in that fight at the front, albeit Ricciardo did fall away after the safety car came in. But I think there is signs of progress for Red Bull, even if they're not quite where they want to be just yet.
Yeah, Red Bull definitely making some pretty good progress. Let's talk a bit about the number 2 drivers, in inverted commas. Maybe some people won't like that term, for Valtteri Bottas, but of course making way for Lewis Hamilton today. Had a poor opening stint. Apparently the tyre pressures were wrong, so he was kind of screwed from the start there, and that's why there was such a massive train. But what have you made of Bottas's and Raikkonen's performances so far this season, in particular, of course, in this race, Matty?
I think I was a bit disappointed with Bottas' result today. With Raikkonen, I guess there's just a certain element of that we're kind of used to him, like, kind of playing second fiddle at this point. But with Bottas, obviously, he started on pole. Probably expected a bit more from him, or at least be fighting for the lead. But I think there's going to be times during this season where he's going to be able to, he's going to be more comfortable with the car, because it's you have to remember it's only his 3rd race in the car, so there's still a lot of getting used to it. And to get it on pole in only his 3rd race is, I think it's the biggest achievement from this weekend, because it shows, in the right conditions, he does have at least the pace with Hamilton. And during the season, I mean, he's going to be, getting closer and closer. And, you'll probably get to a point where at some tracks he'll even be, faster than Hamilton. With Raikkonen, though, I don't see him really doing anything else apart from being second driver to Vettel.
And Matty, of course, we saw that penalty for Hamilton today. Do you think that was fair?
Yeah, completely. It was a bit of naughty driving from Hamilton there, to be honest. And even though he did lose out in the pits, it's still it still affected Ricciardo. Not so much, but it meant that. Well, I'm not really sure if it did affect him, to be honest. But it's the sporting code, isn't it?
And Alex, do you think if Hamilton hadn't had that penalty, he would have won the race, or do you think Vettel had this one in the bag?
Well, it's all kind of ifs and buts, really. It's hard to tell. I mean, looking at the time differences in the end, I think it was something like just over 6 seconds with the way the traffic played out. So obviously, if you just take 5 seconds off that, then it would have been very, very close. But obviously, had he closed up, he would have had to get past, and there's all sorts of different variables that would have come into play. I think the main difference between, the reason Vettel won today and in Australia actually was the strategy from Ferrari. They struggled last year on that front, but this season they've used the undercut brilliantly, has to be said. So that especially today, even when Vettel, he said it himself, he still actually lost out under the safety car. He still came out in the lead somehow. I thought when the safety car came out, I thought Vettel might be a bit further down the order, but. No, you have to say Ferrari have really nailed the strategy so far this year, and I think that's something Mercedes is definitely going to have to look at, that undercut, seeing as that seems to be very, very powerful, and overtaking does seem to be a little bit more difficult, and following other cars, especially getting past on DRS straights, seems to be quite difficult this year. So maybe that's something Mercedes are going to have a look at if they want to be beating Vettel. And I think also what's helped Vettel was not having Raikkonen there to worry about it, because especially today in the first stint, Mercedes had 2 cars to worry about, whereas Ferrari just had Vettel to really try and win the race with. So I think that's helped him out, but yeah, strategy has definitely played a big part so far.
And Matt, what do we think about that kind of Vettel-Hamilton battle? Do we think that Mercedes lost this one on strategy, or do you think that was it very, very close? Was it down to Ferrari's just having a faster race car, or do you think Mercedes could have done anything different, or was it just lucky because of the timing of the safety car?
Yeah, I think the safety car helped Ferrari a lot. If Sainz hadn't crashed on Stroll, I think it would have still been close between Bottas and Vettel, and maybe Hamilton could have got up in there as well. But I think the safety car was definitely the key point in this race. The Ferrari just happened to play their cards right. They pitted just before the safety car, and then while the safety car was out there, everybody pitted, and then Vettel just happened to be in front. And even after that, he still kept a good pace up front, which by pulling away from both the Mercedes cars. And Hamilton's penalty also was a big factor in there. If it wasn't for the penalty, I also think that the finish would have been a lot closer. But yeah, I think it's both a mix of strategy and of both incredible pace. So I think that if Ferrari keeps playing their cards right in those ways, I think they can definitely go for it.
And what did you make of that incident that caused a safety car between Sainz and Stroll? Do you think the blame lies at one of the drivers' doors, or do you think it was just a racing incident, Matt?
I couldn't catch. I didn't really catch it live because I had to look away for a while from the TV. But looking at the replay, it seemed to me that Sainz just kind of barged into from out of nowhere in there. So yeah, I think the blame lies squarely on Sainz for this one. Stroll, he's getting a lot of bad rap for these crashes, but he's really just he's the victim in this case.
Alex, what was your take on it?
Yeah, I'd have to say the blame does lie with Stroll for this one. It reminded me quite a bit of that the infamous incident with Gutierrez and Maldonado back in 2014, I think it was, when Gutierrez got flipped over. I think Sainz was quite a long way back actually from Stroll, and it was going slower coming out of the pits as well. So I don't really see how he thought there was going to be a gap there for him to go down the inside, but in the end he didn't really ever seem to get alongside Stroll. Obviously he made the biggest impact on kind of the side of Stroll's car in the end, which shows just how far back he came from despite braking so much later. So yeah, I think Stroll, he does get a lot of bad press just because he's so young and he came into F1 with a lot of money, but I think so far, I said this on Twitter earlier, his 3 DNFs so far, none of them have actually been his fault so far, so I think we've got to wait to judge him, really.
Matthew, where do you think that one? Where do you think the blame lied then? Do you agree with the other two saying that Sainz was probably at fault? Do you think that warrants a grid penalty, or are we just going to leave it to lie now because both drivers suffered?
It's squarely in Sainz's court, that one, because I saw the footage of it, and Stroll was kind of left with, he was a passenger in that completely. I saw some people on Twitter moaning, saying, Stroll could have seen him coming, but it was a really kind of late dive from Sainz coming out the pits, and he broke way too late. By the time he made contact with Stroll, he was, he'd missed the apex of the corner, so I don't see, if Sainz had, broke in a sort of respectable place, then the accident would not have happened at all.
So Felipe Massa then, he finished 6th. We had Perez in 7th, Grosjean 8th, Hülkenberg 9th and Ocon 10th. Alex, what do we make of that kind of midfield battle after Bahrain? Because of course, Perez came from 18th to 7th, a pretty impressive drive from him, and Massa as well, right up there as well.
Yeah, Massa surprised me quite a lot today. I think he was running 4th at one stage, and if you count Hamilton's penalty in, he was a net 3rd actually, for a couple of laps at least. Perez did do a fantastic job today, and Force India got the strategy exactly right as well. With the timing of the safety car, it meant that he was actually behind Hülkenberg when the safety car came in, but I think fitting the super softs at the safety car was the right decision from Force India, because it allowed Perez to get past and then make that gap which Hülkenberg and Grosjean weren't able to close up at the end of the race. Perez actually would probably be my driver of the day for today, and Force India are actually looking very, very strong, particularly in the races so far. I think that's double points in every race so far, I could be wrong. Grosjean again has seemingly have quite a solid car, doing a bit better than I thought, and Renault finally getting their first points on the board. I don't think it was quite the maximum for them today, like I was saying about Hülkenberg fitted the soft tyres when the safety car came out, and for whatever reason he seemed to lose quite a lot of time in the first few laps, obviously being passed by Perez and then getting jumped by Grosjean in the undercut when they both made their pit stops, and for whatever reason he never managed to make up that time to Grosjean on the better tyres that he'd lost out on. So Renault definitely looking strong, especially in qualifying. Hülkenberg does seem to have the measure over Jolyon Palmer, I think it's safe to say, so far, going off the first few races. So yeah, I think it would have been nice if Palmer could chip in and maybe give Renault a fight on two fronts, as has been the case with Force India, and possibly even Haas so far, even though Magnussen had a bit of a more difficult weekend this time. But yeah, it's certainly all to play for, and we know, especially in the midfield battle, development, it almost certainly won't be kind of the order it is now when we get to the end of the season.
Matt, you've made quite a lot of jokes, it's fair to say, I think, about Jolyon Palmer, and got quite a few laughs courtesy of him. What did you make of him today? I mean, it's tough to say, isn't it? Because, of course, in qualifying he was 10th, on one hand, but then on the other hand he was 1.2 seconds off Hulkenberg, and then today just had a bit of a scrappy race.
Yeah, I was surprised that in the beginning he actually managed to make a few positions. Like I say surprised, it sounds like I'm make another joke about him, but really it's just that I wasn't really expecting him to start off well. I was expecting him to maybe drop back a little bit, but no, he was actually doing well in the beginning. But after that, I guess he just spiraled off because I didn't really notice him doing much apart from bagging a few wheels with a few drivers and locking up a few times. But really, to me, it just seems like maybe it's either he doesn't have the car in place set for him. Maybe I'm gonna go on the blaming team thing here again. Maybe Renault just didn't set up the car for him well, or maybe he is not yet accustomed to the car. But I think the problem here is really himself because compared to Hulkenberg, he's just so far below. It's just the problem has to be with Julian himself.
Yeah, I've got to agree there, to be honest. I think it's a confidence as much as anything as well. He might have the underlying ability, maybe not to match Hulkenberg, but at least to get within a couple of tenths. So maybe he just goes on Twitter and types his name in and just sees all this abuse and he just can't really cope.
That makes me feel guilty.
Yeah, but it hasn't been great, has it, for Palmer? Matthew, what did you make of that battle for 11th? Because I think you mentioned it earlier. That was provided quite a lot of entertainment. Watching the likes of Verline, of course, who's making his 2017 debut. We had Alonso in there as well, of course, who's always box office, of course, on the track and on the team radio as well. So what did you make of that? The kind of points, the battle for the non-points paying positions, Matthew.
Well, you say it's a battle for the non-points, but it's like the battle for the hopeful points. You can get these like late race DNFs, so they're fighting for they were fighting for potentially something, and it was fairly good to watch. And I felt it kind of added a little spice to the race for obviously the lead of the race as well, having to negotiate their way through the traffic there. There's not really a lot to say about it because unfortunately none of the drivers really finish in the points, but I guess it shows that the pace of the Sauber is okay, or not as bad as everyone was saying it was, or at least they got the strategy right, because I think we were talking about this before, that you're saying that Sauber were the only ones who did a one-stop race. Is that correct? I don't know. I wasn't.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Verline doing the famous one stop to 11th, which is just a completely Sauber's thing now. But yeah, do you think they can score a point this season, Matty?
Given the right circumstances, yeah.
I mean, I guess any team can, can't they? Really, I guess given the right circumstances.
There's a Monaco Grand Prix, so any team can really score points there. As long as they take each other out this time, they'll be all right. Yeah, they should be okay as long as that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, but I think Sauber definitely, and of course McLaren as well, could really do with some points. But at least Sauber out alone there because they are now ahead of McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. So that's going to be a positive, right, Matt?
Yeah, sure. This race also shows that Verline is definitely back up to pace. I think he just needed this time to recover and get his fitness back in order. Even despite Ericsson retiring, I think he did far better, even in qualifying and even in the race. He definitely had the pace for points, but unfortunately, he just I guess this just wasn't his day. But yeah, I also do have belief that Sauber can get some points, and if they do get some points, it's going to be with Pascal.
Yeah, I've got to agree there. I think it would be pretty difficult not to. Let's talk about our drivers of the day then and race rating to kind of cap off this review. So I want your driver of the day and your race rating out of 10, starting off with you, Matty.
Driver of the day, I can't really look. Well, it's between two people. Obviously, you've got Vettel winning the race. But then also, for me, you've got Sergio Perez, starting that far down the field and managing to finish him, solidly in the points. Both of them are kind of for the same reason, though, that it was just masterful strategy. If I had to choose out of the two, I guess I'll go with Vettel because of the race win. But that's no discredit to Perez. overall race, I think it's a solid 7 out of 10. Not the best, but clearly not the worst.
Alex, where does it lie in terms of being out of 10 this race?
Well, for my driver of the day, I think I already mentioned Perez slightly earlier on, because, well, he obviously came from so far back. I don't really know why he went out in Q1, because it wasn't the yellow flags. But
was it not?
I don't think it was, no. I think he did finish his lap before that, before Sainz's car broke down. But anyway, he managed to recover it, and I think he did most of his overtaking in the early stages, and that's been a real theme so far for Perez. He's done a lot of overtaking in the opening laps, and when he did get himself up into 7th place, he managed to consolidate it. He had the pace over those around him as well, so that was a fantastic drive from him, and he keeps up his good form early on in the season. He's quietly going about his business, but it's been a really good start to the season for him, and I'd give him driver of the day and race rating, kind of similar to what Matty said, sort of 7.5 out of 10 maybe. Could have been slightly better towards the end, and we've had more dramatic races, but it wasn't the worst.
Matt, what about you then, in terms of your driver of the day and race rating?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Perez as well. Like I didn't see him doing much, but again, that's just something that I ended up not noticing. But yeah, to come back from 17th and up to 7th is quite a big achievement. Plus, him and Ocon are also doing a very good job at Force India. Now I believe they're in 4th place at the constructors now with this new result. So. Yeah, they're both.
The orders
both
are
doing
Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, Force India, Felipe Massa in 5th there. Sorry, carry on. You can take that one, Matt, if you want. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Perez as well, just because of this masterclass drive, and my rating would be, I'll give it an 8 because well, it's not just a thing of in-track action or the incidents. It's also a lot to do with strategy, and I think the strategy decisions, I think, were kind of interesting as well, with the safety car and Ferrari pitting before going for the overcut, maybe undercut, overcut. I'm kind of losing.
Sounds like the beginning of the Womble song.
Yeah. But yeah, to me it's an 8 out of 10 because of all these reasons.
Yeah, so I think our kind of overall rating is about 7.5 out of 10. And then, yeah, like we've mentioned, Prez and Vettel probably the best guys today. Of course, next round is in Russia, and if we're feeling a bit brave, has anyone got any bold predictions for Russia, or do you think it's just gonna be more of the same?
Well, Russia is really easy on tyres, so that, I mean, it's gonna be colder, so that in theory shouldn't suit the Ferraris as much. They, or at least from what we've seen so far, seem to prefer the warmer temperatures. But the undercuts aren't going to have the same power. It's kind of... I'm going to go out on a limb and go with Hamilton, but that's really not convincing. That's a far from convincing
it sounds
prediction from me. Yeah.
Alex, of course, Bottas is a bit of a master of this track, along with Austria. It's probably 2 of his best tracks. Of course, very, very close to pole position a couple of years ago, as Chris Cook will remember. Did not go very well, of course, at the final corner, but he could have been on pole that day. He's got his first pole now, so do you think this could be Bottas's best chance, maybe his last chance to kind of stop himself just being a number 2 driver, Alex?
I think this track should favour Mercedes, but it's so hard to judge at this point in the season. But I am going to say Hamilton will win the race. I think this will be our first 1-2 of the season. I think Bottas, he's very, very good at this track. I think he will get into second place, considering it won't be so easy for Ferrari to use the strategy in this race. I think the temperatures and the less tyre degradation might play in tandem Mercedes here. So I'm going to go for Hamilton's win for Bottas and Vettel in Russia, but it's so hard to tell at the moment, yeah.
A little bit worrying as well for being Russia, because I remember last year we had 3 good races to kind of start the season when we went to Russia, and everyone was a bit disappointed because it's pretty much a one-stop. Probably will be, so yeah. Matt, any final predictions for Russia or for the rest of the season? Any predictions you want to throw?
Well, for Russia, I'm gonna go with all of you guys. Basically, I think it's gonna be a Mercedes race because of the tire degs are not the big concern there, and it's also not well, I wouldn't say it's not exactly the best track for overtaking, but it's not very prime for that. I mean, but yeah, I think Mercedes is going to get up there, but I'm also hoping that Bottas can finally get his win, because after his performance yesterday and maybe I would say a heartbreaking performance today, I think he deserves a win. I think it's still coming this year, and I hope it comes next race.
Yeah, definitely. That would be very, very nice to see, and hopefully, I don't know, Raikkonen can win at Spa or something. That'd be decent as well. Just to get everyone everyone's a winner apart from Palmer at the moment. But we'll see what happens in Russia. That was a breakthrough race for Renault last year, so we'll see how it goes for them. But I think that is pretty much it then for this review of the Bahrain Grand Prix. You can find all of the Twitter, YouTube, Club Penguin, anything, all the kind of links to them for all the guys on here down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for coming on, guys. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. You can leave your race rating and your driver of the day down in the comment section below. But that is all from me. Goodbye.